When Gloria and I first got married, everything felt like it was falling into place. We were young, full of hope and ambition, and ready to start a family. We always talked about having kids, but instead of doing the traditional route, we decided to adopt. It felt like a good decision, something bigger than just us, a chance to give a child who needed a home a future. Gloria was just as excited as I was. We were both ready to make a difference. When we first saw Mia, a little girl at the orphanage, it was like everything clicked. She had these wide brown eyes, always watching, always wondering. I don't know what it was, but the moment I saw her, I just knew. We didn't even have to talk about it. Gloria smiled and nodded, and that was it. We decided she was the one. The adoption process was long and stressful, but it felt worth it. I remember the day we brought Mia home, how we both held her hand in the back seat of the car, her little fingers wrapped around ours. It was like we were a real family at last. But it didn't take long for things to start shifting. At first, it was small stuff. Gloria would spend hours getting everything ready for Mia, decorating the nursery, picking out toys, planning meals. But as soon as Mia came home, it felt like Gloria started to pull back. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and Gloria would be gone, out with her friends or just out for a walk, she'd say. Then, there were the days when Mia needed attention, and I'd find myself doing it all. Feeding her, changing diapers, staying up late while Gloria slept. It wasn't like I minded. I loved being a dad. But it stung. I could see that Gloria wasn't as invested. She didn't seem to care like she used to. The more time passed, the more it became clear. Gloria wasn't just stepping back. She was disappearing in front of me. She'd complain she was tired, or that she needed me time. She'd disappear for hours on end, leaving me with Mia. And when I tried to talk to her about it, she'd just shut me down. "You're being dramatic, David. I'm just stressed," she'd say. But there was a coldness to it, like she was brushing me off. Things got worse, and I started to see the signs. There were empty wine bottles around the house, bottles I didn't recognize. She'd come home late, her breath smelling of something stronger than just alcohol. Vodka, whiskey, I don't know. I didn't want to believe it, but it was hard to ignore. I'd ask her where she'd been, and she'd snap back, "I'm just out with the girls, David. Why do you have to question everything?" But it wasn't just the drinking. There was something deeper, something darker. One night, she came home completely hammered. I helped her into the house, and she leaned against me, slurring her words. "I'm not a good mom, David," she said, her voice breaking. "I never should have agreed to this." She looked at me like she didn't even know who she was anymore. It hit me like a punch in the gut, but there was something else there, too. Regret, yes, but also a distance, like she wasn't really talking to me, just venting to whoever would listen. I didn't know how to help her anymore. That's when I started noticing the phone. Gloria would get texts late at night, texts that she'd quickly hide when I walked in the room. The first time I asked her about it, she said it was just work stuff. "Don't be paranoid, David," she snapped. But it didn't add up. She was always so secretive with her phone, and I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells around her. Something was off, and I couldn't figure out what. By then, I knew something wasn't right. Gloria had pulled so far away from me, from everything. I was doing everything for Mia, picking up the slack in our marriage, and every time I tried to get close to Gloria, it felt like she was pushing me away. I was frustrated, angry, but mostly, I was heartbroken. How had we gotten here? I never imagined it would go this far, but the signs were clear now. Gloria wasn't the woman I married. And the more I tried to reach her, the more I felt like I was losing her. It didn't take long before I started feeling like I was living with a stranger. Gloria's behavior grew more erratic as time went on. More nights out, more bottles of alcohol disappearing, more lies. I remember one evening, I came home from work, and Mia was crying in her crib. I rushed in to comfort her, but Gloria wasn't anywhere to be found. I found her in the living room, slouched on the couch, a half-empty bottle of whiskey next to her. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Can't you see I'm trying to relax, David?" she muttered, her eyes glazed over. "Mia's fine. Just leave me alone." I didn't know how to respond to that. I felt like I was drowning in a relationship that was slipping through my fingers. I told her Mia needed attention, but Gloria just waved me off. "I'm not a daycare, David." figure it out. It was like she had completely checked out from her role as a mom, as my wife. And that was when I started to realize, I wasn't just dealing with someone who was tired or stressed. I was dealing with someone who didn't care anymore. About Mia, about me, about anything. The breaking point came one night, when I found a message on her phone. I wasn't snooping, it was just there, wide open, while she was in the shower. I saw a name I didn't recognize, David, followed by a string of flirtatious texts. I froze. My heart sank into my stomach. It wasn't just any David, it was the guy from her office, the one she'd been working late with all the time. I felt the air leave my lungs, my head spinning. My mind raced back to all the times I'd asked her where she'd been, who she'd been with. Every answer had been a lie. When she came out of the bathroom, I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't. I was numb. But the second she saw my face, she knew. I didn't have to say a word. The guilt was written all over her face, but instead of coming clean, she got defensive. "What's this about, David?" she snapped, pulling her phone away from me. "You don't trust me anymore?" I stood there, holding back everything I wanted to say. I could feel my hands shaking. "Who is he, Gloria?" I asked quietly. Her eyes flickered, and for a moment, I saw a hint of fear in them. "It's nothing. Just a friend." "You're overreacting." I wanted to scream, to throw the phone in her face, but instead, I just stared at her. "A friend, huh?" I shook my head. "I'm done. I'm done being the fool." She didn't even try to apologize. She didn't even seem sorry. Gloria just walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, holding a phone with proof of her betrayal in my hands. That was the moment I knew we were finished. No more pretending, no more hoping it would get better. Gloria had already checked out of our marriage, and I was the last to realize it. She had already moved on emotionally, and maybe physically, too. She just hadn't bothered to tell me. The next few days were a blur. I was in a daze, going through the motions, trying to be there for Mia while my whole world was crumbling. But Gloria, she barely even acknowledged me. She spent more time away from home, more nights out with friends, while I took care of everything. Mia, the house, the bills. All of it was on my shoulders. But it didn't matter. Because deep down, I knew Gloria didn't care. She wasn't even trying anymore. And that was when I made the decision. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending I was living a life with a partner who didn't want me. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was everything. Her neglect, her lies, her indifference. It was over. I packed my bags, called a lawyer, and told Gloria it was time to end things. She didn't argue. She didn't try to fight for us. She just shrugged and said, "Whatever. If you think that's best." And just like that, it was done. Divorce is a weird thing. You think you know what to expect. Lots of fighting, anger, maybe some relief. But when it actually happens, it feels like the ground has shifted beneath you, and nothing is solid anymore. The first few weeks after the divorce were the hardest. I was adjusting to living on my own again, which wasn't easy, especially with Mia. I had no idea how to juggle being a single parent. I was doing it all: work, taking care of Mia, keeping up with the house, and trying to stay afloat. But every time I walked into the house, it hit me: Gloria wasn't there. She wasn't anywhere. It was just me and Mia. It was a lonely feeling, even though I was surrounded by people. Gloria, on the other hand, didn't seem to be struggling at all. If anything, she seemed relieved. She didn't come around much, not even to see Mia. When she did show up, it was like she was a stranger, like she didn't know the kid I was raising. She'd make excuses not to take Mia for a few hours, or not visit for holidays. It hurt at first, seeing how little she cared. I wanted her to want to be part of Mia's life, but it was clear she wasn't ready for that. Then there was the guilt. I felt this constant weight on my shoulders, like I had done something wrong, like I had broken up a family. I'd have these long nights, holding Mia while she slept, wondering if I had made the right choice. I didn't regret leaving, but I did feel the loss. The family I had envisioned was gone, and there was no way to get that back. But I also started to feel something else: relief. Slowly, it crept in. Gloria's absence, her constant neediness and selfishness, her emotional distance, It had taken so much out of me. And now that she was gone, there was a space I didn't know I needed. It wasn't that I was happy she was gone. It was just that, without her, I could finally breathe. A few months after the divorce, I made another decision. I wasn't going to let this whole experience ruin me. I wasn't going to be the guy who lost hope in everything because of one failed marriage. So, I took another step, something I hadn't considered at the time of our divorce. I decided to adopt another child. A new chapter. A fresh start. I called up the orphanage, the same one where we'd adopted Mia. The people there remembered me, and when I told them I was ready to adopt again, they were supportive. They helped me through the process, made sure I was prepared this time. I wanted to do it right, to give a kid a loving home this time without any of the baggage that came with Gloria. And when I met little Ethan, it felt like everything clicked again. He was this shy little boy with a huge heart and a quiet smile. He reminded me of Mia when we first brought her home. Full of potential, full of need. Ethan was the kind of kid I could focus on, could build a future with. He gave me something to look forward to, something to hold on to when everything else felt broken. It was around this time that I met Sabrina. She worked at the orphanage, helping with the kids, making sure everything was in order. She was kind, patient, and understanding, someone who truly cared. We started talking more as I went through the process of adopting Ethan, and she helped me navigate the paperwork and the emotional ups and downs of it all. She was a solid presence, and honestly, I think I needed that more than I realized. Sabrina was the kind of person who listened when I talked about my struggles with Gloria. She never judged, never made me feel like I was wallowing. It wasn't long before we started spending more time together. After everything I'd been through with Gloria, I wasn't looking for anything serious. But Sabrina was different. She wasn't like Gloria. She was grounded, genuine, and most importantly, she cared. Over time, we started to grow close. She was there for me in ways I didn't even know I needed. She didn't try to fix me, didn't try to rush me into anything. But the more I got to know her, the more I realized she was someone I could trust. Someone who could show me what real love looked like. Eventually, we started dating. I won't say it was easy. I had baggage, she had her own struggles, but together, we made it work. And after a while, I knew it wasn't just a fling. I wanted this. I wanted her. And as things started to fall into place with Sabrina, I started to see the person I had once been, the person who believed in love, in family, in second chances. I could feel myself healing. Little by little, I was becoming the man I had hoped to be before all of this started. And it was with Sabrina and Ethan that I finally felt like I was building the life I had always dreamed of. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was real. And that, for me, was more than enough. As the months passed, life started to find its rhythm again. The initial shock of the divorce wore off, and I began to settle into my new life. Mia, bless her heart, was doing okay. She still asked about Gloria sometimes, but I tried to keep her routine as normal as possible. I wasn't perfect at it, but I was trying, and I loved being a dad. Every day, it felt like Mia and I were learning together how to navigate this new world. Adopting Ethan was the best decision I could have made. He brought so much light into the house. His little laugh, the way he'd run around chasing me or play with Mia. The difference between the home Gloria had left and the one I was creating now was like night and day. It wasn't just the noise and the mess. It was the warmth. There was an energy in the house that hadn't been there before, and I couldn't help but smile when I saw Ethan's bright eyes looking up at me. Sabrina was a big part of that change. She had been so patient with me, letting me take things at my own pace, not rushing me into anything. It was like a weight had been lifted just by having someone who truly cared. I didn't have to worry about pretending or keeping up appearances. With her, I could just be me. The real me, the one who had been buried under the weight of my marriage to Gloria. She spent time with me and the kids, helping out when I needed it. And it wasn't long before I started realizing how much I wanted her in my life. It wasn't about filling some hole Gloria had left behind. It was about Sabrina being her, and about us building something new together. She was kind, genuine, and so good with Ethan and Mia. I remember one evening, watching her sit with Mia as they read a book together. The way Mia leaned into her, smiling, was the moment I knew I wasn't just falling for Sabrina. I was falling in love with the idea of what we could become. A family. It felt like everything I had lost with Gloria was slowly being replaced, not by a perfect version of life, but by something real and meaningful. A second chance at what I had always wanted, only this time it felt right. Gloria was still out there somewhere, doing her thing, but I had long stopped caring about what she was up to. My focus was on Mia, on Ethan, and on building a future with Sabrina. I didn't need to wonder about Gloria anymore. I had my own life now, and in a way, that was all the revenge I needed. Not that I was looking for payback, but seeing how far I had come since the chaos she left behind, it was enough to make me feel like I'd won. Even though I was moving on, there were still moments that pulled me back to the past. Gloria's presence, her visits, her sudden calls, reminded me of the mess we'd left behind. It wasn't that I still wanted her, but I found myself wondering if I'd ever be truly free of the shadow of our failed marriage. One Saturday, as I was getting Mia and Ethan ready for the park, Gloria showed up unannounced. Mia's face lit up when she saw her, and for a second, I could feel that familiar ache in my chest. She was still her mother. I couldn't deny that. But when I looked at her, disheveled, eyes tired, I knew things were never going to be the same. "Can we talk?" Gloria asked, her voice lacking any real warmth. I didn't hesitate. "About what?" I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She shifted, almost awkwardly. "About Mia. I've been thinking. I want to see more of her." The words hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. "You've been gone for months, Gloria. You can't just show up and expect things to be the way they were." She looked at me, guilt in her eyes, but her defensiveness showed through. "I know. I messed up. I want to make it right. I want to be part of her life again." I wanted to scream at her, tell her it was too late, but I kept my cool. "You can see her. But it has to be consistent. No more disappearing. No more excuses." She didn't argue, just nodded slowly, her face unreadable. I shut the door after a few more polite words, but I felt the anger rise in my chest. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to trust her again. She wasn't here for Mia, she was here to ease her own guilt. After she left, I stood there, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my stomach. I didn't need Gloria back in my life. I had already rebuilt it. Better, stronger, with Sabrina, with Mia, and with Ethan. Gloria could show up all she wanted, but I wasn't waiting around for her to fix things. The truth was, I had moved on, and I wasn't going back. Life continued on, and I started to feel like I was finding my balance again. Sabrina and I grew closer, and I could feel myself letting go of the anger and pain from my marriage to Gloria. With Sabrina, things were different. She wasn't trying to fill some void, she was just there, being herself, and that was exactly what I needed. It wasn't all easy. Raising Mia, Ethan, and trying to navigate a relationship with Sabrina was a lot. But it felt like real work, something I could pour my energy into, instead of the constant emotional battle I'd had with Gloria. There were nights I stayed up late, talking to Sabrina about everything. My past, my fears, my hopes for the future. And I realized, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what came next. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Sabrina and I were sitting on the couch. The house was quiet, just the sound of the fridge humming in the background. I leaned back, trying to relax, and she smiled at me, her eyes soft and understanding. "You know," she said, her voice calm, "I'm really proud of you." I chuckled, a little surprised. "Proud of me? For what?" "For everything," she said, her eyes steady on mine. "For making it through all that with Gloria, and for taking on so much with Mia and Ethan. You're doing great." I hadn't really thought about it that way. But hearing her say it, I realized how far I had come. I had survived a marriage that almost destroyed me. I had built something better from the wreckage. And now, with Sabrina, it felt like I could finally breathe again. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I wasn't looking for some grand redemption or to show Gloria that I was better off without her. But every day, I was more certain that my life was in a better place now. Sabrina wasn't trying to fix me, she was just accepting me. And that was all I ever needed. As the months went by, I stopped thinking about Gloria as much. I still wondered how she was doing sometimes, but it didn't hurt anymore. I was learning to focus on what was in front of me, my kids, my life, my future. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. It had been a few months since Gloria had last popped in, and I thought that maybe she'd finally gotten the message. But I was wrong. One evening, I was sitting at the dinner table with Mia and Ethan, when I saw a familiar name flash across my phone screen. It was Gloria. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, so I was curious about what she wanted now. "Hello," I answered, trying to sound casual. "David, we need to talk." Her voice was shaky, almost like she was on the verge of tears. I didn't know what to make of it. "What's going on, Gloria?" She hesitated before speaking. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I screwed up, and now everything's falling apart. I don't know who I am anymore." Her words hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. There was this vulnerability in her voice, something I hadn't heard in a long time. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly drowned out by everything else she had done. "Gloria, I'm sorry things are tough for you," I said, keeping my tone even, "but I can't fix your life. I'm not your emotional crutch anymore." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, like she was about to say something else but didn't know how to get the words out. Finally, she spoke again, her voice more distant. "I don't know why I thought I could still come to you. I don't have anyone else." It stung. But it also felt like a slap of reality. She was still looking for someone to rescue her, still clinging to the past like it could somehow make things right. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I had moved on, and I was finally starting to understand that no amount of guilt or regret on her part could change what had happened between us. "I'm sorry, Gloria. I really am," I said, swallowing the bitterness that wanted to slip out. "But I can't keep doing this. You need to figure this out on your own." And just like that, the call ended. For the next few days, I didn't hear from her again. I wasn't sure if she'd taken my words seriously or if she was just processing everything in her own way. But I knew one thing. There was nothing more I could give her. Not anymore. Sabrina noticed the change in me when I told her about the call. "How do you feel?" she asked, looking at me with those soft eyes of hers. I shrugged. "Relieved, I guess. Like I finally said everything I needed to. I'm done." It was a hard thing to admit. But it was true. Gloria had been a part of my life for so long, and even after everything that had happened, I still wanted to help her. But I couldn't. Not anymore. She had made her choices, and now it was her turn to face them. And me? I was moving forward. A few weeks passed after that phone call with Gloria. Things settled into a quiet rhythm, and life felt like it was finally gaining some stability. Sabrina and I had started talking more seriously about the future, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. It wasn't about making up for lost time or fixing past mistakes. It was about creating something new, something better. We had dinner with the kids one evening, and Sabrina mentioned that she'd been thinking about moving in together. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was the next step for us. Things were already feeling right between us, and I wanted to give this new family a real chance. I'd never been one to rush into big decisions, but with Sabrina, it felt natural. We both had our scars from the past, but together, we seemed to fit. It wasn't about forgetting what happened with Gloria. It was about moving on from it. I didn't want to live in the shadow of my old life anymore. I wanted to build a life that wasn't weighed down by regret and anger. A few days later, I had the conversation with Mia. She'd been asking more questions about Sabrina, who she was, how long we'd been seeing each other, if she could stay over sometimes. She was excited about the idea, and I could see that she was starting to really warm up to Sabrina. She liked having her around. When I told her that Sabrina might be moving in with us, Mia's face lit up. "Really? She's gonna be here all the time?" "Yeah, kiddo," I said, ruffling her hair. "Sabrina's going to be part of our family. If you're okay with that." Mia didn't hesitate. "I'm okay with it." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I was doing the right thing. This was the family I was meant to have. The next step was telling Ethan, who was a little younger but still excited to have Sabrina around more often. Things were falling into place in a way that felt almost too good to be true. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I also started thinking about Gloria less and less. Her presence didn't loom over me anymore. She had faded into the background, and I could see her for what she was, a woman trapped in her own choices, stuck in a cycle of self-destruction. She wasn't my responsibility anymore, and I didn't owe her anything. I still hoped she'd find her way out of the mess she'd made, but that wasn't my problem to fix. And with Sabrina by my side, I was finally ready to look ahead, to build something lasting and full of love. It wasn't the life I thought I'd have, but in a way, it was even better. This was a life I'd created, a life I could be proud of. And for the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. It had been months since I'd last heard from Gloria. After that email where she tried to apologize, I thought that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally gotten the message. We were done. She had broken us beyond repair, and there was no going back. My life had moved on, and I'd made peace with that. But then, one quiet evening, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "Hello," I answered, unsure what to expect. "David, it's me." Gloria, her voice came through, small and hesitant. A knot tightened in my stomach. I hadn't thought about her much lately. Life with Sabrina and the kids had settled into a routine that felt right. But there was still something about Gloria that, when she called, would always pull me back into that messy, painful place. "Gloria," I said, trying to sound neutral, though I could feel the familiar anger bubbling up. "What is it? Why are you calling?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her gathering the courage to speak. Finally, she said, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything, and I've been so lost. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just wanted to tell you that I regret everything." I rubbed my face, trying to fight the urge to snap at her. Her words weren't new. She'd apologized before, but it was always the same. A fleeting moment of guilt followed by weeks or months of complete silence. But this time, there was something different in her tone. It was raw, vulnerable, and almost honest. I sighed, letting the words hang in the air between us. "You've said this before, Gloria. You've said sorry over and over, but actions speak louder than words. What do you expect me to do with this?" "I don't expect you to do anything. I just wanted you to know," she replied, her voice breaking a little. "I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. And I know you're probably angry at me, but I didn't know what I was doing." I felt that old familiar ache in my chest, the one that always came when she dropped these heavy, regretful statements, trying to guilt me into feeling sorry for her. "I'm not angry at you anymore, Gloria," I said, quieter now, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I'm just done. I've had to rebuild my life. I can't keep letting you pull me back into your mess." There was a long pause, and then she whispered, almost to herself, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. I've lost everything, David. Everything." And for a moment, I almost felt bad for her. But it didn't last. She had made her choices, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. I could hear her sniffling, but I knew there was nothing I could say that would fix things. "You have to fix this on your own, Gloria. I can't do it for you anymore. You made your bed, and now you need to lie in it." I hung up, feeling a sense of finality in my chest. It wasn't about being cruel. It was about letting go. I had nothing left to give her. The woman I once loved was gone, and the person she had become wasn't my responsibility. I wasn't her savior. With each passing day, I found myself more and more grateful for what I had now. Sabrina, Mia, and Ethan. They were my new family. Not that we didn't have our struggles, but things just felt right. Sabrina wasn't just my partner. She was becoming a mother figure to Mia and Ethan in all the ways Gloria never could be. Sabrina and I had talked about moving in together for a while, but I think we both knew it was the natural next step. After Mia and Ethan had settled in with us, the house had become a lot livelier. There were always toys scattered around, random kid drawings stuck to the fridge, and the constant hum of Sabrina's laughter as she helped Mia with schoolwork or braided her hair. On a Friday evening, as we sat down to dinner, Sabrina looked across the table at me, her eyes warm and steady. "David," she said, after a pause, "I've been thinking. What do you think about us moving in together officially? I mean, I'm already here most of the time, and it feels like it's just right." I looked over at her, seeing the hopeful expression on her face, and a warmth spread in my chest. I didn't need to think about it long. "I think that sounds perfect," I replied. It wasn't a rush decision, but it felt like the next step in a life I wanted to build, not just for me, but for the kids as well. Sabrina was already a part of our daily life, and I could see how happy Mia and Ethan were with her. Mia, especially, was over the moon. She couldn't wait for Sabrina to have her own space in the house, and I knew that this wasn't just about Sabrina and me. This was about creating a family where everyone felt loved and cared for. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Sabrina and I sat on the couch, our feet up, relaxing for the first time all day. "You know," Sabrina said, turning to me, "I'm really proud of you." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Proud of me? For what?" "For everything," she said simply, her eyes softening. "For the way you've handled all this. For being a great dad to Mia and Ethan, and for trusting me to be part of that. You've been through a lot, David. And you're doing it. You're doing great." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I'd spent so much time focused on the past, on what I'd lost, that I didn't realize how far I'd come. "I don't know what I'd do without you," I said quietly. It was a simple truth. Sabrina had been there when I needed her most, and she hadn't backed away when things got tough. She had stepped up, not just for me, but for the kids. And now, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was doing it all alone. There was a shift in me, a realization that had been creeping in over time. It wasn't just the change in my circumstances. It was the change in me. I wasn't the man I was when Gloria and I first got together, and I wasn't the man I was when I filed for divorce. I had grown in ways I never expected. I wasn't the same broken person who had spent so much time trying to fix a relationship that couldn't be fixed. I was David. I was a dad, a partner, and someone who had found peace in letting go. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, least of all to Gloria. I had made it through the worst part of my life, and now I was living something real. Sabrina and I spent more time together talking about the future. What we wanted, where we'd go, how we'd make this life together work. There were little moments of joy I found in these conversations. Discussing how to save for a vacation, talking about what kind of house we'd like to buy in the future, dreaming about the kids' futures. It was during one of these late-night talks that Sabrina looked at me and said, "You've come a long way, David. You really have." And I realized, for the first time, I was proud of myself. I had come out the other side of something terrible and had built something worth keeping. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I thought I was done with Gloria. I thought I had put the final nail in that coffin after that last phone call. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I heard a knock on the door. My heart sank when I opened it to find Gloria standing there, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, eyes wild and tired. She was a shell of the woman I had married. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice breaking. I stepped aside to let her in, though I wasn't sure what she expected from me this time. "What is it, Gloria?" Her face crumpled as she sat on the couch. "I don't know what I'm doing with my life anymore, David. I've lost everything. I thought I could get it together, but I can't. I've ruined everything. I don't know how to come back from this." I wanted to feel sympathy for her. I wanted to reach out and comfort her. But I couldn't. She had made her choices, and now she had to face them. "I can't be the one to fix this for you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've got to fix yourself, Gloria. I can't do it. I've moved on." Her eyes flickered with a mixture of desperation and defeat. "I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "You have to figure that out," I said, standing up to signal the end of the conversation. "But I'm not your solution. I can't help you anymore." For a moment, she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she nodded slowly, as if finally understanding the distance I'd put between us. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but it was too late. I didn't need to hear it anymore." The days passed, and my focus shifted more and more to Sabrina and the kids. We were a family now, and everything seemed to be falling into place. Mia and Ethan were growing up fast, and I could see how happy they were with the life we were building. I watched Sabrina with them, how she handled the messes, the school projects, the discipline, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. She wasn't just my partner anymore. She was their mother in all the ways that mattered. And watching them thrive under our care, made me realize how far we'd come. I thought about the future a lot. The kind of future I wanted for the kids. It wasn't about them having a perfect life. Nothing was ever going to be perfect. But it was about giving them the foundation of love and stability that Gloria couldn't offer them. And for the first time, I knew I was doing the right thing. It's strange, how you think you'll never be able to let go of something, and then one day you wake up and realize it's already happened. With Gloria, it wasn't just one moment of clarity, but a gradual fade, like the slow wearing away of a stone by the ocean. Every day it got a little easier to see her for who she really was, and more importantly to see myself for who I was becoming. I used to think about the past constantly. Every argument, every lie, every broken promise. I replayed them over and over, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong, wondering if I could have done something differently. But with time, I stopped torturing myself. I stopped carrying the weight of her choices on my shoulders. Sabrina had a lot to do with that. She was patient with me, more than I deserved. There were nights when I'd just stare out the window, lost in thought, and she'd ask what was on my mind. I didn't always want to talk about it. Hell, most of the time I didn't. But there were moments when I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone since the divorce. She never pushed, never rushed me to heal. Instead, she just was there. And that quiet support, the way she was just present, helped me release the last of the anger that had been eating at me. I thought back to the day I finally told Gloria we were done, when I signed the papers, the weight that lifted off me as soon as I let go of that chapter. That was the first step, but letting go didn't really start until I could stop feeling sorry for her. Until I could stop wondering if there was any way she could still change. I used to think if she had just loved me enough, if she had just tried, things could have been different. But I had to face the truth that it wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about the love I gave or the future we could have had. It was about Gloria and the choices she made. And those choices were hers to live with. I wasn't the one who had to clean up her mess. By the time I'd accepted that, I realized I was no longer angry with her. I was angry at myself, for letting it go on as long as it did. But even that anger was fading. There was no point in hanging on to it anymore. It only hurt me. As much as I hated admitting it, I had learned something about myself through this whole ordeal. I wasn't as weak as I had once thought. I had survived Gloria's betrayal and built a life that was better, more whole, than I ever could have imagined when I was stuck in the mess of that marriage. And now, when I looked at Sabrina, at the kids, I knew I had found something real. Something right. So letting go of Gloria wasn't just about moving on. It was about giving myself permission to be free. Free from the guilt. Free from the emotional chains she had wrapped around me for so long. Free from waiting for her to apologize or change. I didn't need her to validate my pain anymore. I had already healed. It was a slow process, but by the time Gloria called me a few weeks later, asking if I wanted to talk again, I realized something. I wasn't even angry. I was done. I had no need to prove myself to her, no need to rehash the past or listen to her half-hearted attempts at making things right. I didn't need her approval anymore. I had moved on. When I hung up the phone, I didn't feel relief, exactly, but more of a quiet assurance that I had made the right choice. Letting go of Gloria wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about accepting it as part of my journey, and not letting it define me. The future now felt like an open road ahead of me, full of possibilities, free from the weight of what I had been carrying for so long. There was a strange sense of peace I hadn't known was possible, not just from the freedom of letting go of Gloria's toxic presence, but from finally accepting that my past didn't have to dictate my future. Sabrina and I were taking things one step at a time, but I knew I was finally ready to build something lasting. I could see it, feel it, in the way our family was coming together. I'd been given a second chance, something I'd never even thought possible after Gloria's betrayal, and now it was up to me to make it count. I found myself spending more time with the kids, watching them grow in ways that filled me with pride. Mia and Ethan, even though they'd been through their own heartache, were flourishing. They were happy, confident, and comfortable with the new family we were creating. Sabrina and I didn't have all the answers, but we didn't need to. We were figuring it out together, one day at a time. In many ways, Sabrina had become not just my partner, but a mother figure to Mia and Ethan. It was clear that she loved them as if they were her own, and they loved her right back. I knew it wasn't always easy for her. She had to earn their trust, just like I had to, but she did it. She did it without trying to replace Gloria, but instead, with the patience and care that came naturally to her. As for me, I could see the difference in how I handled things. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore, wondering what Gloria was doing or if I was making the right choices. I was present. I was focused on the here and now, building the family we had always wanted, but in a way that was healthy and strong. There were still challenges, but I had Sabrina by my side, and together, we could face whatever came our way. I still thought about the past sometimes. It would be hard not to. But it wasn't the all-consuming, painful weight it used to be. It was just part of my story. Something that had happened, something that had shaped me, but not something I had to carry anymore. I wasn't defined by my marriage to Gloria, or by her betrayal. I was defined by how I picked up the pieces and kept moving forward, no matter how hard it got. One evening, after the kids were in bed and Sabrina and I were sitting on the porch with our coffee, she turned to me and smiled, a quiet, peaceful smile. "David, I'm really proud of you," she said softly, taking my hand in hers. I didn't have words for what I felt in that moment. It was a sense of deep gratitude. Gratitude for the second chance, gratitude for her love, and most of all, gratitude for the life we were building together. "We're doing it, aren't we?" I said, more to myself than to her. She squeezed my hand. "We are." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of my past. I felt light, free, and ready for whatever came next. This was my new beginning. This was the family I had always wanted, and it was mine. No one could take that from me. Gloria had her own path to walk now, and I had mine. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. But for the first time, I didn't feel angry or resentful. I just felt relieved. Relieved that I wasn't stuck in her mess anymore. Relieved that I had something real and beautiful to hold on to. The future stretched out before me, not as a reminder of the past, but as an invitation to something better. And I was ready. I had everything I needed right here, right now. This was my family. My life. And no one could take that from me.